everyone, we're looking at another fat acceptance book today called Fat So, because you don't have to apologize for your size. And surprisingly enough, this was actually released in 1998. And oh my goodness, has a ton of the rhetoric not changed. You don't get the full introduction with the Kindle thing. You get most of it, but it is a couple pages short. I'm still going to be covering the entire introduction for today, and I have so many tabs, and I'm hoping I can remember everything I want to talk about. So it starts with her kind of talking about her life and how the fact that she was fat, she really felt kind of, and this person I'm talking about is Marilyn Wan. And it talks about how, she was trying to be like the best person possible, the nicest person, kept her emotions to herself, tried not to rock the boat in any way, but somehow her fatness just kind of kept her back. And she said, I had friends but never felt like part of the crowd. Instead, I focused on areas where I knew I could succeed. And so she had a great deal of independence, and she had a good number of hobbies that kind of facilitated great adventures in her life. But she says, in fact, I really wasn't afraid of much since I figured the worst had already happened to me. I was fat. And I have such a problem with that statement because I know that she's painting this in a way of, I didn't have any fear because I had already dealt with so much. But, really, the worst had already happened to you. You were fat. It's not like you had childhood cancer. It's not like you had a debilitating illness that kept you from, physically from being able to participate in regular childhood activities, including just going to school. Really, you being fat was, you're not disabled. You don't even have to fight for wheelchair access. You may be fat, but you still have legs that work. I had a real problem with that. This part you can read starting right here. And it says, being fat outweighed everything else about me. I am 5 feet 4 inches tall and I weigh 270 pounds. My blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugars, the 3 best indicators of health, are all normal. All normal at the time of this writing. I would like to know how she's doing. If we choose to read this one, I'm gonna follow this up and look at anything current she might have going on, because apparently Fat So was a 90s zine. And I'm curious to know, what happened to that, what happened to her. If we decide to read this, I'm going to do a more deep dive into it. But I have no history of serious illness. I don't smoke. I exercise and eat my vegetables. I brush my teeth and pay my taxes and wear a seatbelt. Yet, from my most personal moments with that guy to my official business with the insurance company, I was shut out because of a number on the scale. Yes, it sucks that the guy you were dating kind of dumped you because you had gained weight and he wasn't attracted to you anymore. And yes, the insurance company wouldn't put you on their plan because you are overweight. But obesity was at the time a pre-existing health condition, and it still is a pre-existing health condition, but insurance companies could deny you coverage because of that. For anyone, actually, now that I think about it, no one in my audience, at least according to my analytics, is under 18, so y'all probably know this already. Again, it's that same rhetoric of blood pressure's fine, cholesterol's fine, blood sugar's fine, therefore I am the picture of health. Let's do a stress test for your heart. Let's do, how's your oxygen saturation after a little bit of exercise? If you were in the position where you had to pull yourself up would you be able to do it? Like, you say you exercise, what kind of exercise do you do? There's many indicators of health, and that those three are not necessarily the best. They basically say, hey, you're not in imminent danger of something terrible happening. But I think to say that these three are not only the best, but from how she kind of phrases it, it's like they are the only indicators of health. I mean, she does list, I don't smoke and I exercise and I eat my vegetables and all that. But she doesn't list anything else that's measurable. Uh, and so I would like to see you do a stress test to see how your heart handles you having to do a moderate level of activity. So, and this is another, so a little further down on the same side of this page was something else really interesting, where she said, let's see. So I sat there on a really bad day deciding between stunned and hurt and outraged. I thought about what my date had said. I thought about what Blue Cross had said. And I realized I absolutely did not agree with them. That was not a death sentence. It wasn't just a fact. I decided that if a guy couldn't accept my weight, he didn't get to date me. And I think that's actually, I actually don't have a problem with that one. I think that, there are some people that put like ridiculous, I don't think this was particularly ridiculous, but there are some people that have like insane, if you're over 150 pounds, regardless of how tall you are, I won't date you. I've seen people that are like not interested in girls with chest sizes, lower than, smaller than like a double D. And like, it sucks. And by all means, if it's like they're saying you don't want them, realize that if they don't want you, then you can just not want them. Like, I know it doesn't always work that way, but like, I think that's a perfectly fine thing. I decided that Blue Cross's label of morbid obesity wasn't a diagnosis, it was discrimination. And that is where we have some trouble. Morbid obesity is in fact a diagnosis, not discrimination, honey. It is labeled a diagnosis, and the reason why you were denied health insurance at the time was because you were at a risk of developing far more conditions way earlier that would need to be managed constantly due to your weight. Following on the next page, this whole first portion here, I need to read it out to you. For example, lesbians and gay men who defiantly answer to queer, I thought about how I'd always avoided the word fat. Now I want to come out as a proud fat person. I want to show that the names really couldn't hurt me anymore. I thought again about being called fatso as a child, how painful and damning that word felt. But I was fat. I am fat. So, I didn't look up to see whether a light bulb actually went on over my head, but that's what it felt like. I knew at that moment I simply had to publish Fat, so the zine for people who don't apologize for their size. I have such a problem with her fucking comparing this to the LGBT community. I have so much fucking problems with that. Because, let's say you're fat. The worst thing you could probably do as a kid is get sent to fat camp. Now, if you've watched fat camp, we should do a reaction to Return to Fat Camp. Because there was some stuff to watch there. I wouldn't necessarily make fun of the kids for their weight, but there were some kids that was interesting to watch. We could do a reaction to that. But anyway, the worst thing that would happen to you is that you were sent to fat camp, where you are put on a diet of no junk food, all lean protein and veggies, and they let the kids have as much fruit as they want, I think, typically. And lots of opportunity for exercise and no electronics, because the goal is to have those kids moving. At the end of that summer, you would come out, barring any interpersonal issues with peers, because we've seen how fucking dramatic some teenagers can get and how drama thrives at that age. But aside from that, you would come out thinner, more able to do stuff, and you would build a lot of muscle from all the activities that you had. Now, a queer person having to go to conversion therapy camp for a summer may very well leave them emotionally and psychologically desolate, if not severely injured, possibly ending up in the hospital, possibly dead, possibly violated physically, sexually, because of the fucked up nature of these fucking conversion camps. There would be lasting traumatic scars from being yelled at and told every day at what an abomination they are. And yet you compare that to you being fat and getting called fatso. It's not the same thing. It's not even close to the same thing, and I take so much fucking offense to it. Big thing here, I'm ace. But I don't have to deal with nearly the same amount of shit that gay and lesbians do. I don't. For the most part, I keep quiet and no one asks any questions, and quite frankly, I just kind of dance around the topic for the most part should it come up. But I'm not in danger of a conversion therapy camp. Most people, mostly it's just the dismissive, oh, you'll find someone eventually, if I get that at all. I'm lucky to have a very supportive family that doesn't really care, and quite frankly, all of the women in my family have had bad interactions with their husbands or their ex-partners and are more like, good for you. So I have a very positive family in that regard. But I still find it fucking absolutely offensive that you compare you coming out as a fat person the same thing as someone else coming out as queer, bisexual, lesbian, gay, transgender. Fuck you. Fuck you. It's not the same. It's not even fucking close to the same. If you don't want to feel insecure about your body and you don't want to feel shame and you've decided, I'm just going to live my life my way and not worry about my weight, that's fine. Do whatever the fuck you want to do, but don't compare yourself to kids that have had to deal with so much more than being called a few names on the fucking playground. She does this whole thing where she frames it so much in this paragraph like she's coming out, which also pisses me off, and I've already had my rant and I want to just kind of move on. But all in all, her parents were very supportive of her fat acceptance, fat liberation zine. And then we move on to, like, not a whole lot of anything interesting happened over here. But the What Are You So Afraid Of, which is the next portion of the introduction. So this part in particular, this is what a fat cell looks like. A healthy, normal human fat cell. Jobs are lost, lovers forsaken, lives postponed, all because of fat cells like this one. A $40 billion industry thrives on the hatred of these graceful lipid spheres. Millions of people fight a war of starvation against them every day. Most Americans would rather get hit by a truck than get fat. Amputation of a leg is preferable. Some would rather die. I mean, the way this is framed is just so fucking dramatic. And yeah, I'm guessing the $40 billion industry is like that diet culture industry thing bullshit that we still keep seeing. But how much is made from the fast food and the fat culture? Huh? How much is made from that? How much is made from how often are McDonald's meals supersized? Because they can be. How much are you encouraged to eat more and eat and eat and eat? Alright? Part of this is just being human, where our celebrations all revolve around food and eating a lot, and it's kind of a matter of comfort because it fills a basic need, and therefore it's often included in celebrations, and it's considered a form of comfort and home. Totally get that. That's not the issue. The issue is the massive amounts of fast food and them companies creating that home feeling with their highly palatable foods. Think about Kraft mac and cheese and every ad that you've ever seen for Kraft mac and cheese. That is fat culture because it equates this highly palatable food that can be eaten very easily in excess, and it equates it with home and comfort. They prey on you far more than any diet culture bullshit that you are trying to spew. Or I should say anti-diet culture bullshit, but you get what I mean. So she ends up lionizing the general fat cell in this because at least she claims, I have not done any research to back this up, that there's like hardly ever any issues with fat cells. And even in this gigantic medical library, there was only one book that she could find in the entire library catalog on fat cells, and it's because they're simple and elegant, and there's nothing, they're the most, let's see, the quote here says, a most harmless, healthful, innocent tissue. And that is right here. And it's just this singing the praises of the fat cell and why it's good. Fat cells are good. You do need fat on your body. You do need a level of fat. That is why there is a healthy weight, and there is such a thing as underweight, because you do need a minimum level of fat on your body in order for it to function well. And even having a little bit more than that minimum, let's say you're right in the middle of a healthy weight range to maybe to the upper portion of healthy weight range, where you're a little bit heavier but you're certainly not overweight. It's probably good for your body to have a little bit of weight on it in that regard. Even, let's say, you're on the low side of overweight, that's probably not doing too much to your health. But there's a big difference between having that modest amount of fat that helps your body's general functions, and should you encounter a disease or anything, you have at least a little bit of fat on you to prevent you from getting too skinny. Like, that's all well and good. There's a big difference between that, though, and being 400 pounds. Or, as she puts, 270 at 5'4". Or was it 250? It was something like that. This quiz is fucking meaningless. Like, it's framed like one of those magazine ones where you get like a quirky little name, alliterative name for what you are in the fatso thing, but basically it just is like all the D answers are what you want. And I'm not going to go over it, but you're welcome to take a look at this because some of these are really fucking stupid. And unfortunately, that is where the Kindle sample ends. This is at the end of the book, so I'm not going to read it. But we still have about 4 pages left of the intro, so I'm going to just go over that briefly. And it's all about the word fat. The last portion of the introduction is all about the word fat. This is one of the paragraphs in particular. It's reclaiming the word fat is the miracle cure you've been looking for. The magic trick that makes all your worries about weight disappear. Do you want to feel good about yourself? Silence your tormentors? Look better in miniskirts? Use the F word. Dorothy made her wish come true by saying there's no place like home. Well, I'm not Glinda the Good Witch, but I'm here to tell you that all you have to say is the magic word fat. Say it loud, say it proud. Fat, fat, fat. Shake your belly 3 times and there you are at home in your body. Free from the guilt and shame, the stress and the starvation and the self-hatred. So, the thing is though, is that, I mean, she's really advocating the use of the word fat, and we still see that rhetoric in a lot of the fat acceptance stuff today, about how fat is an adjective and they're reclaiming the word and all that, but then you still have a lot of the people that use, like, people of size. I'm a person of size. I'm curvy. I'm whatever. Along with this, though, she also goes over overweight and obese, and we see that telltale overweight. Over whose weight? Everyone has their own unique weight that's right for them. The right weight for some people means being fat, just like other people are naturally thin. Even doctors nowadays admit that those height weight charts are bogus. So there really is no weight to be over. Aside from being judgmental and mean, the word overweight is just plain meaningless. One, it's 20 years later, and I don't know of any doctor that says the height, weight, I'm guessing she means like the BMI charts are bogus. It's certainly not the only thing that it's not the only measurement that they use to determine someone's health. But that doesn't mean that it's bogus. And that whole fucking argument over whose weight, oh my god, I get so fucking tired of it. They always claim that the word overweight claims that there's one objective weight, but it doesn't. Overweight is a classification term for the BMI based on your weight and based on your height. So it is different based on where you fall in that metric, and there is a range of healthy weight before you reach the overweight category. So that is what is meant. I get so fucking tired of this fucking argument. Now, I really have to read. This is a longer portion, but I have to read you guys the entire section on the word obese. This is a doctor's fancy way of saying, I'm looking at you and I find you disgusting. Would you like to buy this ineffective but wildly expensive weight loss treatment? If you don't, you could die. Besides, my country club membership fees are due. It's hard to diagnose obesity. It really isn't. There's a couple of different metrics used. The number on the scale has very little to do with how healthy a person is. The diet specialists never seem to settle on a definition of obese. Yes, there is. They just know it when they see it. Given the subjective nature of this term, you probably shouldn't put much weight on it as a diagnosis. To be fair, for 1998, I cannot say what the diagnosis criteria for obesity was. But now, there's a couple of clear indicators, BMI being one of them, body fat being another, like body fat percentage, of being diagnosed as obese. So it's not a subjective term, it's a medical term that is based on measurable data. Another problem with the word obese is that health insurance companies love to use it as an excuse to deny fat people coverage even when we're healthy. That's not dangerous either. That's discrimination. Plus, a diagnosis of obesity can be used to justify barbaric treatments that doctors could never get away with inflicting on thin patients. No lab coat tone of voice can disguise the sneer contained in the word obese. God, she's reading a lot and she really hates this word obese. There's no sneer in the word obese. And I'm really curious what the barbaric treatments are. What are the barbaric treatments for fat people? It's not discrimination. It is a weight category. The only thing anyone can diagnose just by looking at a fat person is the viewer's own level of prejudice towards fat people. My fucking god. And then she goes in to go against the euphemisms because there's nothing wrong with being fat. And then that is pretty much where the introduction ends. There's a lot to be said for that book. That book seems like it might be fun for the reading group. Yeah, it has a lot of the fat acceptance rhetoric that still is going strong 20 years later. I mean, a lot of that is like verbatim what I hear now. It's kind of strange and I think lends to the lack of legitimacy that the fat acceptance movement has when their rhetoric hasn't changed in 20 years. I mean, typically the way movements work is that there is a level of progression in their rhetoric. Like, they don't stick to just things. Like, they weed out some of the fluff and the not so important stuff, and they whittle it down to, like, the bare minimum of what they really feel is wrong, and then they really push hard on that. But we still see this kind of vague and very personal and self-centralized rhetoric. So it's very interesting. I think this one is a pretty good candidate for our reading group. Uh, but I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? And I will see you next time.